Hello everyone, Jai Hind and welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. My name is Bhanwar Singh, Mix NDA 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012. And I welcome you on the platform, and once again we'll be doing the complete The Hindu analysis, where we'll be taking the newspaper for today, that is 10th of July and Friday, and we'll be doing the complete analysis about the important topics that are there, or the themes that are there in our today's The Hindu. So we'll be talking about like 7-8 of the news which are important for your prelims, for the mains as well, and we'll be seeing which all types of questions you can get from these important articles. Political science, good morning. All right, and let's start the session and let's see which are the important news that we are going to discuss in today's session. So over here, the first thing that we'll be talking about is about India and Australia, because ultimately there is a strategic partnership and the Indo-Pacific as well, and this pertains to your GS paper 2, where we are talking about the international relations. The second topic that we'll be taking for today's The Hindu, it is about the NFSA amendment, that is National Food Security Act amendment. Again, this is about Antyodaya Yojana, where the food grain entitlement row is there, where we have the the concerns which had been raised by Tamil Nadu as well as by Kerala about the recent amendments which had been proposed. So this pertains to both your GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. That is, we are talking about governance as well as welfare and the food security as well. Then we'll be talking about in the third of the topic, that is about SIR in Manipur. There is a complete editorial that you can see in our today's The Hindu, and this is where it says that this is a pathway for the electoral exclusion. So this pertains to Polity, where we are talking about elections, we are talking about federalism and the vulnerable groups as well. That is, this pertains to your GS paper 2. Then we'll be talking about Wayanad's Kalladi tunnel disaster ecology as compared to the infrastructure, because this is again an important article that you will find in our today's The Hindu, and this pertains to your GS paper 1 and GS paper 3 as well, where it is about the disaster management, it is about the environment and the infrastructure as well. Now, coming to the next important topic that we'll be talking about is about US and Iran escalation. All right, so we know that there are the fresh waves of the strikes between both the nations. And again, this pertains to a West Asian crisis that we are talking about. We'll not be moving much deeper, or will not be diving much into this, because we have discussed this issue yesterday. And if you have not watched yesterday's The Hindu analysis, please do watch it now. All right, then we'll be talking about Southwest Monsoon 2026, where IMD, or the Indian Meteorological Department, have said that there had been full coverage and there is a mixed outlook when it comes to the monsoon this time in India. And then we'll be talking about another article that is there. It is about Marathi and Hindi language row, which is about federalism as well as the linguistic identity. This pertains to your GS paper 1 and GS paper 2, where we are talking about society, federalism and even the constitutional values. So this is quite important, and these are the important articles that we'll be discussing in today's session. But before moving ahead, let's see which are the important quotes that we can use for today. Good morning, Cloud and Lowell, good morning. The important quotes that we can use is, the first quote is about the state cannot be neutral between the fed and the hungry. So again, this is quite important, because this quote, it is about the haves and the have-nots. So ultimately, when you are writing about the vulnerable sections, the PVTGs, or any kind of such things, then you can use this quote in your answer, I think. Good morning, Reshma. Then another quote is that education is not about learning the facts, but it is the training of mind to think. And this quote is by Albert Einstein. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes. All right, I always say that when it comes to the education, when it comes to the gaining of the knowledge, you must gain knowledge. That is quite important, because ultimately, what happens is, most of the times the students, they ask, sir, how to, how the questions will come. All right, so that is a very pertinent question that has been asked by the students, to me. And I always say that when it comes to the nature of the question, you should not be worried about the nature of the questions, because ultimately, if you have the knowledge, the question can be framed in any format. But then if you have the knowledge, you will be able to attempt it. But if you do not have the knowledge, if you have, you are not training your mind to think. So ultimately what happens is that we get stuck. we are just an average student in the eyes of UPSC. So therefore, this is quite important that we must train our mind to think and not just learn the facts. And that is what we do every day in our Hindu analysis, where we actually see the various dimensions of every of the news, how it pertains to. All right, so that is quite important that when it comes to your complete preparation, especially for the UPSC, you must see the broader horizon. You should not constrain your mind. You should see in the multiple facets how the complete, the thing that will, have the implication, and that is quite important while you are preparing for the civil services. Now, coming to the vocab part, so we have the word of the day that we have in today's Hindu, that is divagate. Now, what is divagate is basically it is the lose clarity or turn aside, especially from the main subject of attention or course of argument in writing, thinking or speaking. Basically, when it comes to divagate, it is synonymous to deviate, diverge, differ or drift. And you can use this, she began to divagate during the meeting. All right, so again, this is quite important. And again, when it comes to the word of the day, I told you that for the purpose of English and for the purpose of English language, it is quite important that we must, include the words into our vocabulary every day so that we have a vocabulary of words so that we can articulate our thoughts in the English language. Now, this is quite important because ultimately what happens is that we are not able to articulate our thoughts just because we are, we are very short of the words that are there. And thereby, it is quite important that we must build the vocabulary every day. Either it is one day, one word, that is quite enough. Because ultimately, at the end of the year, you will have 365 new words that will be added to your vocabulary. Now, over here, let me tell you that we are offering you with 50% off. And ultimately, you can avail this offer by using the code BRS Live that will fetch you this discount on the platform of StudyIQ. Good morning, Apex. All right. Now, coming to the first news that we have, it is about India and Australia, where India and Australia, they have moved to deepen the cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, this is quite important. Why this news is quite important is, let me tell you, that when it comes to the Quad, we have seen that the Quad has loosened its significance quite lately. Now, why it has loosened the significance? Because the US has moved towards China, or US have drifted towards China, where the US President Donald Trump, he even said that this is about G2. That is the group of two countries, US and China. And ultimately, the US Indo-Pacific Command have, they have left out the Indo from the command, and now it had been renamed as the Pacific Command. The Pacific Command of US, it was renamed as Indo-Pacific in 2018. And that signified that ultimately Indo-Pacific region is quite important for the US policy making, or it is quite important for the complete foreign policy. But at the same time, we are seeing that now US is more tilted towards China, and ultimately this the significance of the India and Australia is that ultimately we have we have moved from the multilateralism towards the bilateral contacts to the nations which are there. Like, for example, we have seen Japanese Prime Minister visiting India. Now we have seen that Indian Prime Minister, he is visiting Australia. So when it comes to Quad members, we know that it is basically made up of the four countries that are there. All right, and ultimately Japan and Australia, they are part of the Quad. So now moving forward towards the bilateral, engagement, that shows that there is shifting, you can say, diplomacy towards from the multilateralism or from the Quad towards the bilateral relationship between these nations. So again, this is quite important. And also important is that over here, Prime Minister Modi, he have hailed Australia's social media ban on the minors and have signaled that there could be curbs in India as well. So we can see that there could be the further bans on the social media, and ultimately the social media could be curbed for the minors in India as well, where we have seen that such kind of digital control had already been there in various countries, whether it is Malaysia, where there is under 16s which had been banned from owning the social accounts. We have Indonesia as well, where the minors had been blocked from the high-risk platforms. And in France, there had already been the bill that had been passed. So over here, this is quite important because Prime Minister Modi and also the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, they have signed a strategic or a joint declaration on the Defence and Security Cooperation in Melbourne in yesterday, that is on 9th of July, and ultimately these agreements, they have been sealed. There had been agreements on the civil nuclear energy as well, where ultimately this is about the uranium supply, for the critical minerals as well. Now, when it comes to critical minerals, this is again quite important because it is about diversifying the critical mineral supply chain, because when it comes to critical minerals, China controls most of it. All right, alongside there is also the maritime security collaboration roadmap that had been laid down by both the nations. Now, Modi have praised Australia's Online Safety Amendment Social Media Minimum Age Act of 2024, and over here this is again a signal that ultimately we can also have the similar under 16 social media curbs in India as well. Now, there is also new institutional architecture launched where we have the PACTS, that is Australia-India Partnership on Cyber Critical Technologies and Supply Chains, which had been launched. Yes, they have signed the uranium deal. Australia offer its land access for the ISRO as well. True. All right, so again, this is quite important when it comes to India and Australia, because when it comes to the partnership that we have with Australia, so it was upgraded to the strategic or comprehensive strategic partnership in 2020. But at the same time, when it comes to the civil nuclear deal, so the civil nuclear deal was in the pipeline, and it was actually inked in 2014, but then it was stayed because ultimately, we had the liability clauses which were there. And because of the liability clauses that were there in the Nuclear Act, so thereby, ultimately this was stayed. And now we are seeing that after the passage of the Shanti Act in 2025, so the nuclear liability rules had been, they have been reformed, and thereby this is where we are, seeing that uranium supply will be there from Australia. When it comes to uranium, so yes, Australia has quite big reserves of the uranium along with Kazakhstan, which are basically the major suppliers of the uranium as well. Now, there is also the 2+2 foreign and the defense ministerial dialogue and the IORA or the Quad frameworks from the static backdrop of or to this bilateral push that is there that you can see ultimately. So therefore, this is quite important when it comes to the complete perspective. Now, when it comes to UPSC, always remember that UPSC is quite, it actually does not directly links the current affairs. Now, what happens is that when such kind of news is there, so UPSC actually is thinking about, okay, what can I ask that the student have not, connected this news to? So now over here it is quite important that Australia becomes quite important, because in the past we have seen that the UPSC have asked lots of questions from Australia. So when it comes to Australia, it is quite important that you must have seen that there were questions about the CS type of you can say the climate that is there, or I can say the Mediterranean type of climate. So there was a question in prelims that was asked related to the Mediterranean type of climate that exists in in Australia. Also, there are the questions that are asked related to the physical features of the Australia as well. So over here again, this is quite important that when it comes to the major rivers, we have Murray and Darling, which are quite important. Then there is the Great Dividing Range that you can see on the eastern side of the Australia. There were the questions that were asked related to the coral reef or the Great Barrier Reef as well. So again, when it comes to UPSC, teachers are like, all right, every Indo-Pacific security arrangement today is indirectly influenced by China's naval expansion. True. All right. So this is quite important that you have to connect the dots. All right, this is quite important because if you are not connecting the dots, then there is the problem that we can have. Right. So this is quite important that you have to connect the things along with the news, and ultimately you have to match and the map the complete region that is there in the news as well. So therefore, this is quite important that when you are reading anything, there should be atlas that should be in front of you. All right, now over here, when it comes to the complete significance, you can see that over here, this signals the India's diversification that is away from the single power dependence, whether it is US or it is China, where it is a kind of hedging strategy which had been shared by the Canberra as well. Now, also when it comes to the economic perspective, you can see that the economic perspective, the uranium imports that will ease India's clean energy transition. And along with this, we have the agreement that had been linked towards the critical minerals corridor that will reduce the China's dependence in the context of EV or the battery supply chains. Also, when it comes to the social perspective, there is the editorial that talks about the India and Australia. Now, in this editorial, if you'll go through it, you will see that ultimately we have the Indian origin diaspora that is growing in the Australia. But that ultimately this diaspora is the largest immigrant born group that is there in Australia, and it is still underused soft power and the economic bridge that could be there between India and Australia in the future. Now, also environmentally, you can see that when it comes to the civil nuclear expansion, it actually supports our net zero pathway that India has without overburdening the land intensive renewables, and that is why this is quite important. Now, coming to the next thing is about the ethical perspective, where you can see that this is about balancing the sovereign strategic autonomy with deepening alliances like commitments. So, it is about how much hedging is non-alignment 2.0 versus alignment, and that is how you can see that the ethical perspective or the dilemma as well that is involved over here. So, again, over here, this is quite important news that you will find in our today's, the session. Now, over here it is quite important that when it comes to the Shanti Act, so thereby is the mentioning of this nuclear deal that is between India and Australia, and this pertains directly to the Shanti Act that was passed in December 2025. Now, over here you could be asked about this in your, in your prelims, and thereby this is quite important. Because when it comes to Shanti Act, what had happened was that earlier we have the CLNDA Act, and ultimately we have only NPCIL and Bhavini, which were the central PSUs. They could own and operate the nuclear power plants. But after the Shanti Act that was passed, we have the private companies and the joint ventures. They can build and operate the civilian reactors under the license. Also, at the same time, when it comes to the supplier liability, so CLNDA section 17B that was there, it gave operator unlimited recourse against the supplier, and that is why we have the foreign vendors which have stayed away. At the same time, now what had happened was after the Shanti Act, the section 17B, it had been repealed. Again, this is quite a concern as well. But at the same time, operator channeled liability with the insurance pool, and ultimately there is alignment with the CSE convention as well. I need economic class, but okay. When it comes to the net zero is basically the target of India, that we should be the net zero emitter of the carbon dioxide and the fossil fuel emission. That is what we call as net zero goals, that India wants to be net zero emitter by 2070. All right. So that is the goal that India has, that ultimately the carbon dioxide that we are producing, so that should not be more than that what we are consuming as well. So that is the net zero goal where it comes to the fossil fuel emissions. All right. Now, over here, at the same time, when it comes to the regulator, so earlier AERB, that is Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, it was subordinate office that was under the DAE, that is Department of Atomic Energy. But now the ARB, it gets the statutory status, independent appointment and fixed tenure as well, and even the quasi-judicial power just like that we have for the TRI and the SEBI also. Also, we have the reactor pathway, where we had earlier only the large gigawatt reactors which were actually permissible. But now ultimately we will have the SMR, that is small modular reactors that could be created. All right. Also, we have the Bharat Small Reactor Framework for the industrial captive use as well. And the capacity earlier was nearly about 8.7 gigawatt after the 63 years where we have the nuclear field that was under the state control. But right now what will happen is that ultimately now we have the target of 100 gigawatt that will be produced by the nuclear reactors in or by 2047. That is the nearly about 8-fold of the increase. All right. Now coming to the next important news that we have in today's The Hindu, it is about the NFSA, the recent amendments which had been proposed. Now over here it is quite important that ultimately the draft amendment to the NFSA that proposes shifting of AAI, that is Antyodaya Anna Yojana entitlement from the household base 35 kg month cap to the per capita 7 kg per person system, and that will be capped at 35 kg per household also. Now this is quite important because ultimately you can see that what was earlier was that in the earlier regime, now why this is the proposal is now and what was earlier. So earlier, like for example, there is a 2-member family. All right, there are only 2 members. So in the context of if there were 2 members, so earlier they were getting 35 kg for the family itself. And ultimately now this will change because there will be 7 kg per person or per capita that had been said. So ultimately now they will getting only 14 kgs. Now if there is someone who is there, like for example 5, if there are 5 members, so earlier there were 35 kgs and again they will be getting 35 kgs as well. But at the same time, if there are 6 people, so for the 6 people in a family, earlier they were getting 35 kgs, and since it has been capped at the 35 kg itself, so right now also they will be getting 35 kg itself. There will be no addition. So when it comes to the complete changes that had been proposed for the NFSA, that is the National Food Security Act. So over here, the Antyodaya Anna Yojana is quite important because this is for the poorest of the poor. And here we have the entitlement that had been changed, or it has been proposed, where it will be 7 kg per capita instead of the per family entitlement that was there before. Now, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, we have C. Joseph Vijay, and Kerala's Food Minister, they have opposed the change, citing that that will harm the small and the nuclear families which are there. Now, when it comes to Tamil Nadu, it is quite important. Why Tamil Nadu and the Kerala, they are opposing? Because in Tamil Nadu, when it comes to average family size, so in Tamil Nadu, the average family size is just 3.54. All right, that is the average family size. So ultimately, if it is 3.54, so that means the total allocation that will be there for the Tamil Nadu, that will decrease significantly. Per capita allocation improves the fairness, but must avoid the excluding vulnerable households. That's true. So ultimately over here, the major reason is why we have the Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they are proposing or they are opposing the complete amendment is that the average family size, the family size that is there in these 2 states, that is quite low. And ultimately CPIM Politburo, they have also demanded the amendment to be dropped, and there are the public comments that are open till 13th of July 2026. Now, Centre over here argues that the change, it will actually remove the intra-category inequity. Now, what happens is that the smaller households, they are receiving the higher per capita share than the larger ones. Like for example, I gave you this example. So there are there are only 2 members. So over here, the per capita is, if it is, 35. So it is somewhere around like per capita is nearly about 17 point something. All right. So it is one person is getting 17 kg of the complete, the entitlement that is there. But at the same time, if we have 5 person, so they are getting over here how much? They are just getting 7 kg. So over here, Centre is arguing that actually when it comes to the per capita entitlement, so over here it will, reduce or it will remove the intra-capacity, entitlement or the inequity that is there, and that is why the Centre has proposed this complete amendment. But my question over here is, and that is the question that should come into your mind as well, that if it is about the per capita entitlement, it's okay. But then why you should cap it at 35 kg? Because then again, there is no inequity that will be created between the families where we will have more number of the people that are there. So ultimately there will be still the inter-category inequity that will be there if there will be more members in the family, and ultimately this amendment, it will only, be you can say disadvantageous for the nuclear families which are there, and thereby there would be the intra-category inequities that will be created later on as well. Now, when it comes to the National Food Security Act, it was passed in 2013, and ultimately it guarantees that there is the subsidized food grains that is provided through the TPDS, that is Targeted Public Distribution System, where we have nearly about 75% of the rural and the 50% of the urban population that is covered. And when it comes to Antyodaya Anna Yojana, so this is the priority most category, which is basically where we provide the entitlement to the poorest of the poor. Now, when it comes to Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they have the historical politics of the food security that actually predates 2013. where there was a free rice scheme that was, just after or onward 1967 that was provided in Tamil Nadu. And we have Kerala's PDS that is since 1962 as well, that actually predates the FCI or the Food Corporation of India itself. So over here, it reflects that there is deep-rooted welfare state tradition that makes them highly sensitive to any dilution of the entitlements, and thereby they are opposing the proposed NFSA amendments that had been made ultimately. Now this actually reopens the center-state federalism friction over the welfare design. And ultimately, this is where you can see the same kind of the federal friction that was there when the GST was introduced, or even for the SIR as well. So there is a trust deficit that exists between the Southern Union, the Southern states and the Union, and that is where you can see that it is a political implication of the complete perspective. Also, when it comes to the complete aim, the aim of this proposed amendment is the fiscal rationalization, where the subsidy bill will be reduced, and this will be reduced by removing the entitlement excess for the smaller households. But at the same time, it is about saving the modest against the political cost. That is quite important, that the savings will not be that much large as compared to the political cost that will be there for these amendments as well. Also, there is the nuclear family structures, which are basically predominant in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu. They will be disproportionately hit, and this is a demographic transition blind spot in one size fits all kind of the entitlement design when it comes to the PDS category. Now, this also raises a distributive justice question, and it is about that is equality, that is where we have the same per capita share. It is more just than the equity that is protecting the most vulnerable household configuration. So again, this is quite important because this raises the ethical perspective or ethical questions as well. Now, coming to the next news that we have for today, it is SIR in Manipur is a pathway to exclusion. Now, why this is important is we know that the SIR or the special intensive revision, it is being carried out in the parts of the country. Now, when it comes to Manipur, there is a phase 3 of the SIR that is being done, or it is under the phase 3 of the SIR, and this is being conducted by the Election Commission of India under the Representation of People Act 1950. Now, there are nearly 22 lakh voters. Now, these voters, they had already been deleted from the draft rolls, which is across the Mizoram, Odisha, Manipur, and even from the Sikkim combined during this SIR phase. Now, when it comes to Manipur, the complete situation is quite different. Or you can say that when it comes to Manipur, there is a grave concern when it comes to the SIR. Now, why this is the grave concern? Because we have seen that in Manipur, there were the ethnic clashes or the conflict that started between Meitei and the Kuki tribes, and that was in 2023. Right now also we see that there is the fragmentation of the various ethnic groups that lives in the Manipur. When it comes to Meitei, there is Kuki and we have the Naga tribes as well. And ultimately, because of these ethnic clashes, there were nearly about 60,000 of the people, they were displaced, and there were the houses which were burnt. And ultimately, because of the houses which were burnt, you can see that there is the identity documents, they were actually destroyed in the complete clash. So over here, it is quite important that when it comes to the SIR, so SIR could functionally disenfranchise the already displaced Kuki Zo community, given the complete documentary and even the naming convention barriers which are there, and thereby this is quite important for the Manipuris when it comes to the SIR as well. Now, this is quite important that the SIR is being conducted under the Representation of People Act section 21, and this is to revise the electoral rolls that are there. When it comes to the Manipur, you must understand that there is the ethnic conflict which had been since May 2023, which actually includes Meitei, where we have 54% of them, which are majorly, they are there in the Imphal Valley. There is Kuki Zo as well, nearly about 15% they lives in the hills, along with the Manipur Naga, which are also 26%, they are also living in the north or the northern hills which are there. So over here, it is quite important that when it comes to the Manipur tribals, so over here, unlike the other hill tribes, they do not enjoy the 6th schedule protection that is only available to the 4 of the states, that is Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram, and ultimately they rely on the weaker Article 371 autonomous hill councils or the councils which had been created in the Manipur. Now, over here it is quite important because this particular article or the editorial is quite important because this pertains to a grave danger that we are talking about. Now, this grave danger is about disenfranchisement of the Manipuris which have lost their identity documents because of the clash that we have seen in the state. Also, when it comes to the SIR, it is actually intersecting with the active ethnic conflict that is in the state, unlike the rest of the India where SIR is a routine but contested administrative exercise. So in Manipur, it actually risks that there is, or this SIR, it could be read as majoritarian. That is where we have the Meitei and the Naga cleansing narrative due to the illegal migrant framing that had been used for or used against the Kuki-Zo tribe. So the Kuki-Zo tribes, they are basically said to be in the Manipur that they are the illegal migrants which had been there. So then again this complete exercise, this could be seen as exercise that is being targeted against a particular ethnic tribe that is over here, and again this could lead to the further tensions into the valley and into the region itself. Tanmoy, Jai Hind. Alright, also when it comes to the displacement, so ultimately, when it comes to the economic perspective, you can see that it had devastated the livelihood in the hill districts, and even there had been economic blockade of the Kangpokpi district, which had been followed by the retaliatory violence, and it compounds the precarity ahead of the document-based verification as well. And when it comes to the social perspective, the naming convention, so it actually mismatches. Now, what happens is that there is tribal customary names, and we have the anglicized spellings as well. Like for example, I took the session on the Manipur region or the Manipur state. So I used instead of Meitei, I pronounced it as Meitei. So ultimately there is the different kind of the customary names that are there in the tribes, and when you convert it into the English language or in the anglicized spellings, so there is a kind of logical discrepancy risk that could be created, and again that could lead to lots of the people who could be deleted from the electoral rolls. So there has to be administratively neutral rules that should produce the social unequal outcomes, and that is again it is a social implication that you can see in the Manipur itself. No detailed mention of the appeal mechanism which can reduce wrongful exclusions, right? Alright, at the same time when it comes to the core dilemma, so over here the dilemma is about to process neutrality, where actually SIR it applies uniformly all throughout the country. So it is about the process neutrality as compared to the substantive fairness, where actually when it comes to the conditions on the ground, so ultimately on the conditions on the ground in Manipur is quite different from the rest of the country, and that actually makes the uniform application inherently exclusion or exclusionary. So ultimately this is the major debate, or you can say the ethical perspective or the dilemma when it comes to the conduction of the SIR in the Manipur. And also this is a Rawlsian test of the justice, as fairness is under unequal starting positions that is being judged over here. So again this is quite important when it comes to the ethical perspective of the complete issue as well. Now coming to the next important news that we have for today in our today's The Hindu, it is about the 3 more dead in the Wayanad debris. Now again this is quite important because when it comes to the Kaladi tunnel, this has collapsed and it has led to the disaster. And debris that slipped at the Kaladi twin tube tunnel in Mepadi Panchayat in Wayanad on 7th of July 2026, it had killed 6 of the workers which are there, and the rescue operation it had concluded yesterday itself. If the objective is electoral integrity, how will the government balances this with the constitutional right to vote for vulnerable citizens? That is quite important topic or the debate that is going on right now related to the SIR exercise. Alright, now over here what has happened was that when it comes to the Wayanad, so we have over here 21,000 crore rupees, 8.73 Anankampoil and Kozhikode Mepadi tunnel road that was basically fast tracked. Despite that, there were the environmentalist warnings related to this, and also there was a case that was filed in the Supreme Court. But Supreme Court rejected the plea to halt the complete tunnel building in April 2026, and it had cited that this tunnel is actually of the national importance. Now here, when this tunnel or the mishap have happened, so the Kerala PW minister, they have blamed the executive company for ignoring the June 20 debris removal deadline, and also the disaster management authorities, they are also under the scrutiny right now. Now, the leader of opposition, Pinarayi Vijayan, who was the chief minister when this tunnel was actually approved, he called it as a result of the grave administrative negligence, and he have defended that the tunnel's original environmental clearance process was under the due process of the law that was given. So over here, it is quite important that when it comes to Wayanad, or especially in this region, so this is where we have the Mepadi Panchayat, which is located over 7,000 feet elevation. Now, there had been repeated climate-related or climate-linked disaster, where there were 2018, there were the Kerala floods. In 2019, there was Puthumala landslide, and even there was in July 2024, where there was Churalmala Mundakai landslide that was there. So this was basically where we had the similar synoptic rainfall conditions, and that have led to the various disasters earlier as well. Now, when it comes to the complete tunnel infrastructure projects in the ecological fragile Western Ghats zone, they actually, you will see that this is basically where we have the balance that is between the Ministry of Environment, Forest and the Climate Change Expert Appraisal Committee clearance, and the precautionary principles which is being laid down in the environmental jurisprudence. So this is quite about balancing both of them, and thereby this is quite important when it comes to the disaster management as well. Now, the next news is about the fresh waves of the attacks between the US and Iran in the West Asia. So this is quite important, because ultimately when it comes to US-Iran memorandum of understanding that was signed in June, so ultimately that meant to extend the ceasefire by 60 days. But right now you can see that it has ultimately, just after the 20 days, there are the things that have escalated to the another dimension. Now, US have carried out the fresh airstrikes around Iran's Bushehr nuclear plant perimeter after the Iranian-linked tanker attacks in the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran has also retaliated against the US attacks, and it has attacked the US bases which are there in the Kuwait and Bahrain. I was reading today in the morning as well that there were the sirens that were there, even the explosions that were heard just after the cremation of Khamenei. But at the same time, US have denied about any of the fresh attacks that were launched against the Iran. Now, the fighting have intensified hours before the burial of the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, killed earlier in the war, and we have the US strikes which have reportedly killed 17 of the people as per the Iranian agency or the officials. Now, ultimately, the major problem over here is about the safe passage route, where the US has authorized that the ships, they can traverse through the Omani route, that is basically the southern part of the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iran have said that they have the control over the Strait of Hormuz, and any transit that has to happen, it has to be through the Iranian officials. And that is the major bone of contention that have started the fresh wave of the attacks that you can see. Alright, so this is quite important when it comes to the issue that we have the fresh attacks that could be seen in the West Asia. Again, that will disrupt the economic perspective as well. Now, coming to the next one, it is about the Indian Meteorological Department that says that the monsoon has covered the entire country ultimately. So we have the southwest monsoon which have covered the entire country on 9th of July. That is a day later than the normal date, and ultimately this is after the 35 days when the monsoon have reached the coast of Kerala on 5th of June. So over here the forecast is below normal rainfall for the July as well, which is basically where we have less than 94% of the long period average, even as the some of the regions IMD have said that they may see the normal to above normal rainfall as well. India's monsoon rainfall deficit, it stood at the 15% as of 9th of July, that is yesterday. But at the same time, this is a quite improvement when it comes to 38% deficit that was there on 30th of June. Now, historically, when it comes to monsoon coverage data, it shows that there is no reliable correlation that is between the speed of the geographical advance and the eventual seasonal rainfall performance as well. So again, this is quite important that there is no correlation data that is available about the advance of the monsoon and its complete performance. So thereby, this is quite important. Now coming to the next important news that we have, it is the Marathi and the long politics that is behind the language question. Now this pertains because there is the 3-language formula that was decided by the NCERT to be rolled out in the CBSE schools. Now over here, when it comes to Maharashtra, so in 2025 the government order have mandated the compulsory Hindi as the 3rd language from the class 1, that is under the NEP 2020 alignment. But however, when the Maharashtra government have announced this, so there were the street protests that were started, and ultimately this order that was withdrawn by the end of June 2025. Now over here, this row have reunited the estranged political figures as well. When it comes to Bal Thackeray, we know that after him, we had the 2 different factions of the political factions that were created. We have the Uddhav Thackeray, who is the leader of the Shiv Sena UBT, and we have Raj Thackeray, that is, or who is the leader of MNS. So they got united on the shared platform after the years of the rift, and that was because of this controversy. Now this actually controversy revives the centuries old thread that is about the Marathi linguistic assertion, and this is right from Shivaji's 17th century administrative depersonalization to the 1960 Samyukta Maharashtra movement as well. So over here it is quite important that this is again very important for the the complete perspective when it comes to the 3-language formula that we are talking about, and this had been this has been notified by the CBSE as well. All right. Okay. So over here it is quite important that when it comes to the complete issue, so in the Constituent Assembly we will see that when it comes to B.R. Ambedkar, so in his 1949 warning, he have said that this is against the linguistic majoritarian, and there was also Savarkar's contradictory position on the Hindi or Marathi are being invoked in the current debates that you can see, and ultimately this article is quite important when it comes to the complete perspective. So when it comes to the India linguistics case, so they were basically organized or reorganized on the basis of the language that was after the State Reorganization Commission in 1956. But over here it is quite important that this was after the Samyukta Maharashtra movement, where we had the violent 1955-56 agitation in which we had 106 which were died in the Flora fountain. Now the 3-language formula, which is actually under the NAP or NPE, it has historically triggered the resistance from the non-Hindi states, like for example Tamil Nadu or the Maharashtra that is there, and in Tamil Nadu there were anti-Hindi agitations that were there in 1965, which were the most prominent precedent as well. Now the Ambedkar's thoughts on the linguistic states that was published in 1955, he says, or he articulated that one state, one language should be the democratic principle rather than the nativist claim that should be there. So again, when it comes to the language, we have seen that the language which actually must unite, that had been used to divide the citizens in India, and again that is quite a concern when it comes to the integrity and unity of the nation as well. Good morning, Pradeep. Alright, now over here we have another news that is about Supreme Court. Now Supreme Court have over here, what has happened was that there is a famous case about that happened in Meghalaya. So in Meghalaya what happened was there is Sonam Raghuvanshi, and she had been alleged to actually kill her husband as well. Now what had happened was that she was given the bail by the trial court. Now after giving of the bail, what happened was that the government, the Meghalaya government, it went to the High Court, and the High Court also have said that it's okay. Now when the bail has already been granted, so what we can do, and it has also said that okay, bail had been granted, that's okay. But at the same time, now the Meghalaya government has moved towards the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court, what has happened was over here is about the Article 22 Clause 1 that is there. Now this pertains to Article, very important, Article 22 Clause 1. Now according to Article 22 is all about the right to protection in the case of arrest and detention. Now when it comes to arrest and detention, there are the 3 rights which are provided. Now these 3 rights are basically which? The first one is right to be informed about the grounds on which you are being arrested. The second right is that you have to be, or you have the right to consult your lawyer or your own, the legal assistance. You have the right to have the legal assistance. And the third right is that you have to be produced within 24 hours to the nearest magistrate. Now, these are the three rights that are given under the case of the punitive detention. All right, this is under the punitive detention that are given. Now, the major problem over here is that when it comes to the right to being informed about the grounds of the arrest, so here what had happened was that there is a kind of thing that she was just orally said, or she was orally informed. So now over here what has happened was that Supreme Court have referenced the provision to the higher bench so that ultimately there could be the reason, or it could furnish the problems or the reasons that should be there during the arrest. So whether it should be in the written format or it should be in the oral format can also be utilized. So that is the major reason that we have this particular news that comes to, and it pertains to Article 22 Clause 1. Now, coming to the another important news that you will find in today's the Hindu, it is about VBSA Act. All right. So we have the VBSA Act, or the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishthan bill that was passed. And now over here what is there is that under this act, now right now from this is under the committee recommendation. So ultimately it is under the joint parliamentary committee, but at the same time the center, the regions which had been, or which are being ruled by the Congress, they have opposed this particular act. And then again it becomes quite important that you could be asked about this in your upcoming prelims. And therefore this is quite important that you should go through the provisions as well, where it actually wants to remove, or there will be these existing bodies. We have UGC, we have AICTE and NCTE. They will be removed, and there will be the VBSA that will be formed, or Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishthan or Adhikshan. That will be the commission under which we will have the three different bodies that will be created. The first one will be the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Manak Parishad, which will actually lay down the standards. Then there will be Viksit Bharat Shiksha Gunvatta Parishad, that is the accreditation council, and there would be the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Vinyaman Parishad, that will be the regulatory council. Now over here my question is that after this act, which will be the two of the education, or you can say field, that will not be under the VBSA. So please remember that when it comes to VBSA, so the legal education, all right, the law that is there, the legal education, and even when it comes to the medical, so these two fields, they will not be under the VBSA. Again, quite important, because UPSC can trap you like this. Now over here, let's see which are the important questions that could be asked in your prelims examination. The first question over here is, consider the following statements regarding Australia-India partnership on cyber, critical technologies and supply chain pacts. First, it is a bilateral initiative launched under the comprehensive strategic partnership to build a resilient technology supply chain. Second, it operates in complete alignment with the trilateral Australia-Canada-India technology and innovation partnership. Third, the partnership is primarily funded by the New Development Bank, or NDB. So, which of the statement given above is correct? So what will be the right answer here? Let's see. So we have yes, 1 and 2 only, because this will be under the bilateral framework and not through the NDB. So we have 1 and 2, that is the correct answer. That is the right answer. Now coming to the next one, with reference to the PVTGs in India, consider the following statements. We have PVTGs are identified across all states and union territories of India. Then PM Janman mission is specifically aimed at the holistic development of PVTGs. Then among all states, Odisha has the highest population and number of ethnic groups classified as PVTGs. So which of the statement given above is correct? So how many PVTGs are there? We have 75 PVTGs which are there. We have total 75 PVTGs. And ultimately over here, what will be the right answer? I am getting B. That is true, because they are not across all the states. Like for example, if it comes to Haryana, when it comes to Punjab, so there are no PVTGs which are there. So ultimately, first statement is incorrect, the second is true, and the third is also true. Odisha has the highest population of PVTGs. There are 13 of the PVTGs which are basically in Odisha. Alright, now coming to the next one is match the following constitutional provision with their respective themes. Article 371, C, then 6th schedule and entries 25 of the concurrent list. And we have special provision for autonomous district in Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram. Special provision with respect to the state of Manipur. Then education including technical education, medical education and universities. Yes, there are 13 PVTG groups that are there, right, political science. So which one is correct? Right, when it comes to Article 371C, this is about the special provision, and 6th schedule is about ATMM or Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram, and entry 25 is correctly matched. So we have BAC, that is the right answer. Now coming to the next one, given below are the two statements, one labelled as assertion and the other as reason. First, assertion, southern Indian states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu are strongly opposing the per capita based food grain entitlement under the draft NFSA amendments. Reason, southern states have experienced a rapid sociological transition towards smaller nuclear families compared to the northern states. So, in the context of the above, which is the right answer? Which one is correct? Right, both A and R true, and ultimately the R is, or the reason is the right answer or the explanation of A. Now coming to the next question that we have, it is with reference to the National Board for Wildlife, NBWL in India, consider the following statements. First, it is a statutory body that is constituted under the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Then the Prime Minister of India serves as the ex-officio chairperson of the board. Then any project proposal involving the diversion of land within a national park or sanctuary requires the mandatory approval of the NBWL's standing committee. So which of the statement given above is correct? Right, it is not Environmental Protection Act, it is Wildlife Protection Act under which this has been created. And very important thing that when it comes to this particular issue, so first statement is incorrect. Prime Minister is, of course, he is ex-officio chairperson of the board. And remember that there had been lapse of 13 years since the national, when it comes to NBWL or National Board for Wildlife that has constituted a meeting. Although there has to be always, there is a provision that there should be annual meeting that should be organized. But the annual meeting had not been organized of the NBWL since the past 13 years. Again, that is quite important to remember. So we have second and third which are correct. So the answer is B, that is 2 and 3 only. Now coming to the next one, consider the following statements regarding the legal procedural rights of an arrested person in India. First, Article 22(1) of the Constitution mandates that the arrested person must be informed of the grounds of arrest as soon as may be. Then the Code of Criminal Procedure mandates that oral communication of the grounds of arrest is a complete and sufficient compliance with the Article 22(1). Then the Supreme Court in Pankaj Bansal case in 2023 held that the Enforcement Directorate must furnish the grounds of arrest in writing to the accused. So which of the statement given above is correct? So over here, when it comes to the ground of arrest, so this is the major contention why we have the, the bench that has, transferred it to the higher bench. So we have second, that is incorrect, but yes, first and third are correct, and that is B, that will be the correct answer. Now, the next one is match the following border guarding forces with their respective borders they are mandated to secure. We have Sashastra Seema Bal, SSB, then we have ITBP, that is Indo-Tibetan Border Police and Assam Rifles. And then we have India-Myanmar border, we have India-Nepal and India-Bhutan borders and India and China borders. So you have to match the border guarding forces with their respective borders that they guard. So what is the correct answer? We have question number 7 in the front of us. So the correct answer is Sashastra Seema Bal, that is we have India, Nepal and the Bhutan borders, that's true. Alright, it corrects to B. Then when it comes to ITBP, ITBP is at the China border. And then when it comes to Assam Rifle, that is India, Myanmar. Yes, A is the right answer. BCA, that is correct answer. It is A. Now coming to the next one, consider the following statements regarding the sustainable harnessing and advancement of nuclear energy for transforming India. That is Shanti Act of 2025. The first one is it completely replaced the CLNDA, that is Civil Liability for the Nuclear Damage Act 2010 and the Atomic Energy Act of 1962. Second, for the first time, licensed private Indian companies are permitted to participate in the civilian nuclear power generation. It retains the operator's statutory right of recourse against the global equipment suppliers for the latent design defects. Yes, the liability has been, the clause had been, dropped. So, of course, the third is not correct. But again, we have first and second, that is true. So, therefore, the answer is A, that is 1 and 2 only. Now, coming to the next one, consider following pairs of PVTGs and their characteristics. First, we have Juang. Practice shifting cultivation called Toila and maintain youth dormitories called Majang. Then we have Bonda, resides in close-knit communities within the high altitude hills of the Malkangiri hills or the districts. Then Dongria Kand primarily reside in the ecological sensitive Niyamgiri hills. So which of the pair given above are correctly matched? So what will be the right answer for this question? Let's see. Yes, it is D, that is all are true, and therefore the correct answer will be D, that is 1, 2 and 3. Now coming to the next one, consider the following statements regarding Australia's Online Safety Amendment Social Media Minimum Age Act of 2024. First, it restricts social media access to children below the age of 16. Second, it places the primary compliance burden on platforms to verify age rather than on the parents or children. So which of the statement given above are correct? So what will be the right answer for question number 10? Right, it is both 1 and 2, that is C, that is the correct answer. And ultimately, when it comes to your mains, you can practice these questions. First one is the debate surrounding the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhishtan Bill 2025 reflects a deeper systemic tension between the union's drive for the national uniformity and the state's assertion of the legislative autonomy in concrete subjects. Critically examine. Then we have the another question that is related to environment, and that is the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife (NBWL) has increasingly been criticized for acting as a clearinghouse rather than a conservation sentinel. In the light of the recent Wayanad landslide disaster, evaluate the effectiveness of the existing environmental clearance mechanism for high impact infrastructure projects in the ecological sensitive regions. And then for your GS as well. For the ethics, you can practice this. You are a district labor commissioner of a district known for a high concentration of a PVTGs. Now you discover that the local contractors are colluding with the village heads to forge identification documents of the minor girls, sending them as the adult laborers to the hazardous food processing facilities in other states. The families of these minor girls are extremely poor and plead with you not to stop the work, as their survival depends entirely on the reinforced remittances sent by their daughters. Now over here, identify the ethical dilemmas involved in the situation and outline your course of action to resolve this crisis, balancing the enforcement of child labor laws with the immediate survival needs of the tribal families. Now this actually relates to one of the article that is there in our today's editorial. And again, this is how you can see that the UPSC, it actually moves ahead and drafts the questions for you. So this would be all in today's session, and ultimately let me once again tell you that we have the GS Foundation batches on the platform of StudyIQ, where for the English we have the Resolution P2I batch. Now all these batches, they are based upon the SMART model, where you get the structured classes right from the foundation that is built through the NCRTs, and then we move towards the advanced knowledge. Then there is the mentorship, where you get 1:1 mentorship for any of the problems that you encounter while preparing. There is also assessment dashboard, where you actually see your real strength and the weaknesses in the real time basis. There is the 3-step of the revision and the test series as well. Now, you can enroll into these courses, and even you can enroll into the public administration batch that I am taking right now on the platform of StudyIQ, where you can get the 50% off. And this offer is valid only till 10th of July. So you can use the code BRS Live for the maximum discount. That is 50% that you will have on the platform. So that would be all. Apex, CU2 and Cloud Shinobi, thank you. Political Science, thank you. And thank you everyone who has watched the session live, and even those who will be watching the session in the recording as well. So that would be all. But do not forget to like the session. Do like the session. Do share the session with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel if you have not subscribed it yet, so that you do not miss the complete daily Hindu analysis that we do at 9:30 a.m. every day. So that would be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Jai Hind. Thank you.